King Henry VIII. Known for his 6 marriages, his split from the Catholic Church, and his ruthless suppression of dissent, Henry was a monarch who ruled with absolute power and little mercy. But among all the executions that stained his reign with blood, one case stands out for its sheer cruelty. By the time he ascended the throne in 1509, England was still recovering from the Wars of the Roses, a bloody conflict that had torn the nation apart. Henry sought to establish absolute authority, and that meant eliminating anyone who stood in his way, be they noblemen, commoners, or even children. His rule was defined by brutal enforcement of the law. Treason was a death sentence, and in Henry's eyes, treason didn't just mean plotting against the crown. As Henry aged, his paranoia deepened. He executed not just political rivals, but also close advisors, trusted friends, and even his own wives. Among the countless executions ordered during Henry VIII's reign, the case of an 11-year-old girl stands out as one of the most shocking. But who was she, and what could a child have possibly done to deserve such a fate? Her name was Alice Glaston, and history records her as the youngest known person to be executed by hanging in England. Little is known about her life before her death, but what is certain is that she was executed in 1540 in the town of Much Wenlock, Shropshire. Unlike the high-profile beheadings of nobles and queens in the Tower of London, Alice's execution was not one that would shake the foundations of the monarchy, but it was a chilling reminder that Henry's justice showed no mercy. Not even for children, the exact crime that led to Alice's execution remains unclear. Some historians suggest she may have been accused of theft, a crime that, in Tudor England, was often punishable by hanging, even for minors. Others believe she may have been caught up in the brutal legal system of the time, where even minor offenses could lead to death if the local authorities deemed it necessary. At just 11 years old, Alice was unlikely to have been a major threat to the kingdom, yet the courts saw fit to sentence her to the gallows. In the eyes of Tudor law, childhood was no shield against the harshest punishments. Henry VIII's legal system made little distinction between adults and children when it came to crimes against property or the crown. If someone, no matter how young, was deemed guilty, the sentence was carried out without hesitation. As Alice awaited her execution, the reality of her fate would have set in. The fear, the confusion, the sheer injustice of it all. It was the same fate suffered by hardened criminals, traitors, and rebels. But this time, it was an innocent child who would take her final steps toward the gallows. Alice Glaston's fate was sealed the moment she was accused of her crime. In Tudor England, justice was swift and often brutal, with little room for mercy, especially for those who lacked wealth or status. The exact details of her arrest remain unclear, but given the strict legal system of the time, it is likely that Alice was caught in the act or accused by someone with influence. In a society where minor thefts, trespassing, or even speaking out of turn against authority could be met with execution, it would not have taken much to land a child in court. There was no distinction between an adult and a child when it came to punishment. Tudor law treated everyone the same. If you were found guilty, the sentence was carried out without hesitation. Once arrested, Alice would have been brought before a local court. Unlike the grand trials of nobles and political prisoners held in London, trials for commoners were often quick and merciless. There was no legal defense for the accused, no chance to plead for leniency. The judge, likely a local magistrate or landowner, would hear the charges, and if there was any evidence, however minor, the sentence was handed down. In Alice's case, that sentence was death by hanging. There were no appeals, no second chances. Once a verdict was given, executions were often carried out within days. Henry VIII's England was not a place where justice meant fairness, It meant control. The spectacle of public executions served as a warning to others. No matter your age, background, or intentions, defying the law meant death. With the verdict declared, Alice was now just days away from an unimaginable fate. The gallows awaited her, and there was no one left to save her. The day of Alice Glaston's execution arrived. In Tudor England, public hangings were not just punishments, they were events. Crowds gathered to witness the spectacle, a grim reminder of what happened to those who broke the law. But this time, the condemned was not a hardened criminal, a traitor, or an enemy of the crown. She was an 11-year-old girl. The execution would have taken place in a public square or near the town's gallows, where previous criminals had met their end. Alice, likely terrified and confused, was led to the scaffold. There was no mercy, no last-minute reprieve. The executioner, used to dealing with adults, now faced the unthinkable task of hanging a child. Tudor hangings were brutal. Unlike the later use of the gallows drop, which broke the neck quickly, executions in the 16th century often meant slow strangulation. Alice, is barely old enough to understand what was happening, would have suffered the same fate as any adult. As the noose was placed around her neck, did she cry out for her mother? We may never know. But what is certain is that, in that moment, the world watched as justice, if it could be called that, took the life of a child. And then the trap was pulled. For several agonizing moments, the crowd witnessed the horrific sight of an 11-year-old girl struggling against the rope. Then, silence. The execution was complete. Alice Glaston, the youngest known person executed in England, was gone. After Alice's execution, life in Tudor England carried on, and Alice was another name lost in history. There was no public outcry, no reconsideration of laws that condemned children to death. Under Henry VIII's rule, executions were a common occurrence, but centuries later, her story resurfaced, a haunting reminder of the cruelty of the past. Historians continue to debate the exact circumstances of her crime and execution, but one fact remains clear. She was a victim of a legal system that saw no distinction between an adult and a child. As we look back, Alice's fate serves as a stark reminder of how far justice has come, and how fragile it can be. In the world of Henry VIII, mercy was rare, and power ruled above all. And for one 11-year-old girl, that truth cost her everything.